what do you think about the ageism that is projected in the music and arts industry about women?
Don't you know that you're a fact? 'Cause I'm a fact, and we're a fact, and that's a fact.
In the spirit of Femas Cape Town, of course, we like to honor our women artists and talk about issues surrounding our artistry. And this question is particularly directed towards that, which is, what do you think about the ageism that is projected in the music and arts industry about women?
I think for a very long time, the music industry has been quite ageist, especially towards women. It's almost as if you turn 30 and you're no longer relevant or something. But I don't think it's so much to do with the age of the female artists, but the age of their audience. So I think if you look at the consumption habits of young people, they're more voracious about their fandom. They want to collect things, they want to go to shows. If you even just look at kids when they're in the classroom, there's the one kid who says, oh, I love this song. And if they're the popular kid, the rest of the class wants to, be involved somehow. And so there's this sort of, you could see the ebb and flow of trends much more easily when it comes to young people. And I think that's generally what people try to tap into, because you can definitely see how, that consumption can be exploited. But, people like Adele, I'd mentioned as well. Any female artist that you can think of, any sort of strong female presence, Lady Gaga, they've over time accumulated more and more fans. They've gone from having young demographics following them to sort of the middle-aged. And so, as long as I think you are able to grow your brand and sort of speak to your audience in a way that makes sense and sort of relate to them, you can carry your audience through your life. You can grow with them. You can grow old with your audience if you are constantly engaging. And that's the point of trying to sort of have a career in music, is when you're constantly engaging with the audience and getting that feedback. And, there's a narrative that people can follow. So it's not so much about the age of an artist as, are they engaging? Are we growing together? What are we doing as, it's a partnership, it's an exchange. I think that we can all agree that, with time, people become more experienced. So if you're working in the music industry, sort of on the peripherals, I guess, like we might be, I'm 33 right now. In 5 years' time, I'm not going to get any worse at my job if I do everything the way that I hope that I can. So for someone like myself, I don't think it should be an issue. I'm still young, but there's plenty more to learn from here, and things are going to change. And the more I think of a track record that you have in terms of your experience as an artist or as an artist manager or someone working in the industry, the more you can accumulate, and the more you just need to have that sort of adaptive spirit. And I think it's important for artists to remember that owning their authenticity and identity, whether, obviously, you will get some people who are very backward and sort of stuck in the old ways, who are going to say, okay, I don't want to work with these artists because they're so much older, or, wrinkles are starting to appear so they don't look as young and fresh. Those people don't belong in the music industry anymore. You can see how the industry is moving, where there is more space for women, for Black people, for brown people, and there's more sort of awareness around these sort of prejudices. And I don't think it's as prevalent as it used to be, even though I'm sure there's still some ageism going on. There's space for people to be exactly who they are and not have to feel like they have to be young and constantly pandering to this young audience or projecting this youthfulness. It's not necessary. And I just hope with time that these things continue to be more evident to people.
An analogy would probably be the modeling industry at this point, because if you look at the modeling industry, we've gotten rid of Victoria's Secret. That's a huge move. And the impact that has had on the world is really profound, because now we're becoming even more inclusive, and I'm hearing more and more models project their own experiences of falling outside of the inclusivity bracket pre-Victoria's Secret cancellation, and now people that are short, people that are plus size, as long as you have some kind of charisma to yourself, then you are worth being on the screen, then you're worth being an entertainer, worth being an entertainer in the form of still photos, etc. So I think it's really profound how we are evolving, and I think all it comes down to is pretty much your energy that you have to offer and the way that you inspire people rather than the way you look. We talked about this earlier in the conversation, but basically American artists versus South African artists. What do you have to say about the difference, and what do you have to say especially about the almost, let's say it for what it is, but the South African pursuit of Americanizing their music, or the pursuit of American styled music?
Well, it's difficult to say, similarities and differences between American and South African artists. I think that, like I mentioned before, in previous years, it was sort of deemed appropriate to follow in the footsteps of whatever the West was doing, because they did contribute a lot to the culture of the rest of the world, really, I think at this point in time, though, we're seeing a shift in that sort of mentality. Some people are still focused on emulating, maybe sort of your very America-centric rap or hip-hop, R&B, and so deliver their music mostly in English. But then you're also seeing a lot of genres like the ones that I mentioned before, your amapiano tom, house music, Afrotech, all sorts of things where South African artists are more and more proud of their heritage. You're seeing a lot more Kwaito-influenced genres becoming more prevalent in popular music rather than hip-hop. Hip-hop didn't have such a great year last year. Great things were happening, sure, but they were overshadowed by this sort of dance music wave. So I suppose the Americanization of, well, I suppose people could say globalization, but, so the westernization of culture has contributed a lot to the way that we've been doing things down here. And the artists generally have been sort of role models, so to speak, for the ones who are coming out of South Africa, but a lot of that is changing. So we'll see. I think it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to be proud of the South Africanness and however you deliver and express that South Africanness. And I think that one similarity, especially in the wake of George Floyd and, Black Lives Matter, is that we're realizing that people, because, Black folks are in the minority in America, but as a global majority, most people are brown people. So as we try to sort of fight our way through our social economic challenges, our historical challenges, America is exactly, doing exactly that. We have a lot of synergies when it comes to if artists are going to be creating from a place of commentary about their day-to-day lives and their experiences, there are a lot of synergies there. So, it's difficult to sort of make a general statement about that, but those are things that I've observed, and I'm sure some other people have.
Especially, in my opinion, that a lot of the world is brown, and we are transpiring or transcending into a wave where it's becoming even more appreciated, especially considering, I think we can all call the Black Panther moment a monumental moment in history, especially in media, but also in culture, because I remember going to the cinema and seeing, I was just in awe by the response, especially of Black children responding to the screen in such a profound way. So you're spot on with that, and there's definitely an evolution happening, and I trust that it's going to keep evolving, and hopefully faster than we think. How important are NDA agreements between artists and their collaborators, and what are the dangers of no NDA agreement between artists or whoever they collaborate with? Marcia, what do you have to say to that?
I think having an agreement in place with regards to confidentiality does lend trust to the negotiations. So it does make parties feel that there is a level of trust, that there is good faith. And I think people generally think when they have to sign an NDA that it's negative. It's actually not. It's positive. It does also deter theft of intellectual property. So once that agreement is signed, you have got something to fall back on. If anything that was protected within that agreement gets out, I think it's safer for the artist to have that in place at the get-go.
Well, it's difficult to follow someone who's actually very well versed in law. And it's very interesting to hear that it's a positive thing, because I'm a believer in fostering trust. And I think that if it's a positive thing, and it helps people to be able to work without having to worry about what's going to happen to their ideas, definitely important to have those in place, especially if your contributions to a lot of people's creative paths are ideas based and not sort of administrative or I suppose more practical, if that makes sense. I think that, yeah, NDAs, I agree. I think they're important, especially when you are collaborating with someone and your entire campaign or the path towards whatever your release is or whatever your project is dependent on everyone making sure that other people find out certain information at certain times. So if you're going to have a rollout that lasts 3 months, and then you have this artist who is going to run off and tell all of their friends in the neighborhood or some other competitors or whoever about all of your plans, I mean, it loses impact. So it's important to have those things in place if you want things to go according to plan. And I'm one of those people who loves plans. I want everything to be perfect. So perfection, let's put that aside. But as close to as possible is nice to have.
What do you think of the professionalism level of artists, particularly in South Africa, or at least the artists that you have worked with?
The professionalism. Look, I think that in South Africa, we're facing a different set of standards, I think. We don't have a lot of music schools. You know, you've got Berkeley, things like that, you know, internationally. There's not a lot of resources if you don't have internet access and people who are willing to foster, you know, and to be able to give you the knowledge that you need to be able to get ahead. I think that people can sometimes be quite tight-fisted with the ins and outs of what's supposed to be happening with, you know, your intellectual property, with your, you know, music industry sort of skills. But I think I've lost my train of thought now. Professionalism, right. So it's difficult then to try and hold somebody who has never been exposed to how this industry is going to work and expect them to be professional if they don't really know what they're doing. So, you know, it's not entirely something that we can place on an artist to say, you're not professional enough, if we don't really understand what that means. So having said that, if you're talking about professionalism the way you're talking about the way people wear their hair, it's a different thing. But professionalism, let's talk about punctuality. If you're going to say that you have a meeting at 10 o'clock with your label and you need to assess whatever your plan is going to be for the next year, and you don't show up for that meeting as an artist, there's a worry there. I don't think it's a matter of professionalism so much as professionalism is a series of decisions and actions. And whether or not you are serious about your career comes through in those decisions and actions. And that adds up to whatever idea or concept of professionalism you have. So if you're not going to engage in behaviors that show people that you are serious and respectful of their time and energy and effort, because these are people who are your team. They're supposed to be helping you and your career go forward. If you're not going to be respectful of time, effort, energy, compensation, you know, follow through on the things that you say you're going to do, that's not professional. And I think that the best way to try and sort of project the kind of mentality that will get you recognized as a respectable person, as somebody who's a go-getter, who's worth all the time and effort, is to follow those behaviors and those actions and to make sure that someone can trust you with the time and energy that you're putting in.
I want to keep myself tight-lipped before I say anything, but yeah, Marcia, what do you have to say?
I think I can speak from, I think it's subjective firstly, because if I look at professionalism in the industry I come from, everything was suit and tie, punctuality was a big thing. You speak in meetings when spoken to. Whereas if I look at this industry, and it's a different, how do I put this now? It's a different kind of person, maybe, than what I would have found in corporate. People are more expressive. They're a little bit more relaxed. Where I just want to talk about the legal issue or the contract, or they want to quickly just go on a coffee run and get coffee first, and then you wait and you sit. And so I think it's subjective. Younger people maybe, and I'm not specifically talking about age now, but different people in different with different backgrounds are different. They're more expressive, or for them it's fine to have a meeting with their foot on the table and it's fine. Or they walk around the table while they're talking. So I think it's subjective. What I found is the different industries I've worked in, professionalism means something different in every one of those industries. So I've come from the very strict suit and tie. You must be in the meeting and sitting down and ready 5 minutes before, and then in an industry where everything is happening so fast and ever changing, and you think you're having a meeting now, but there's something urgent that comes up, you must be ready to just sit back and wait for the opportunity.
What triggered my brain receptors was when you mentioned putting your foot on the table and having a meeting that way, and immediately my mind goes to someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, who does exactly that. I don't know if you know who that is, but he has become a huge social media mogul and a motivational speaker, especially on social media. And I know that he runs his business as CEO of Vaynerchuk Media, or Vayner Media, just simply with casual clothes. And he curses all the time, but he's still got the business. I guess it's New York, so there's a culture that accepts curse words every second. But it's so true. It's really true how much professionalism has kind of evolved to something else. But if I had to put my 2 cents into this answer, I would definitely say that there needs to be some kind of energy of respect that is being projected. And as long as you're giving that, then there's more reason to trust you. There's more reason to want to work with you. And respect can come in the form of time. It can come in the form of language. But I think nowadays we've got more of a priority on time and proliferation and deliverance, instead of, what may be considered as menial, like language. So yeah, it's definitely something to consider, and actually it's a whole topic on its own, to be honest.
Yeah, I must agree with you. To me, it doesn't matter what you're wearing, how you're sitting. If there's mutual respect, and if you can do your job and you can do it well, then for me, that's not an issue. That's why I say it's subjective.
How much of the law and the fine print does the artist really need to understand to move on with whatever opportunity comes with that fine print?
Everything. I think it's important when you put your signature on anything that you understand every single word that is on that page, that you understand what your rights are, that you're not signing away anything that you're not aware of, that that the words on the paper are simple enough for you to understand. It's important to ask questions. Don't just sign something if you don't understand the terms, because the next opportunity that comes along, you might have tied yourself down on something, and then you go and agree to something else afterwards, and then you sit in a position where you're between two, or you have signed a full buyout of your rights or of your what you own, and you weren't aware of it. So it's extremely, extremely important to understand what you are signing, what you're reading. And if you can't, or if you don't, or if you find it difficult to, then you need to find somebody to assist you. Even if it causes a bit of a delay, rather take your time and understand completely what you are agreeing to.
Thanks for that. Shiba, do you have anything to say with regards to that question?
Well, I think that, look, I think some people would say, as an artist, it's not your job to understand all of those things, and you can get somebody else who's more knowledgeable to do it for you. If you have, whatever it's going to cost to be able to get that person. I don't think that's the wisest thing to do. I think as an artist or anybody who's involved in this industry, you need to have some understanding of how these things work, or at least have an understanding of who you can call and trust to be able to explain it to you. And if you don't understand what's in your paperwork, ask the same people who are giving you paperwork for a simpler version. Like, there's no reason for you to sit there and say, this is not something. As artists, this is your career. This is something that could potentially feed your children. You need to take it very seriously. And as Marcia was saying, you check everything, double check, make sure you have an expert who understands the language to be able to go through it with you, or at least just, you don't necessarily have to understand every legal term and be able to sort of do all these things by yourself, but try to. That's, be proactive, like I was saying earlier on. Because if you're leaving the power of your entire career's direction, who's owning what and how much, in someone else's hands, and you don't know what it is that you're doing, I think that's a very irresponsible way to go about trying to work with other people as well. It's just not smart. So even if you are clueless, pick up a book. It's up to you to make sure that nothing gets in the way of you being able to create and to be able to eat off of your contributions to anything.
And like Marcia said, we've got the world's encyclopedia in our hands, and it's not that difficult in that sense to go and look for something. And it's so pertinent to be able to look at these things because, as you said, Shiba, this is the job that could potentially feed your children, which leads us to the point of how some people view the arts as passing by, or a just some kind of thing to stimulate the senses for a temporary moment in your life. But it is an actual career, and I think some of us really need to start, even artists themselves, that to take it seriously. Unfortunately, we get influenced by how unseriously the world takes it, and we feel like we need to stoop down to that. So very important that you guys mentioned the importance of the fine print. Do you think it is necessary for artists to study their art, or to rather self-learn their art? And what have you seen in terms of the differences between the two? Marcia, do you have something to contribute to this question in terms of that?
I can speak from my perspective. I think having a qualification is always good. It's something you can put in your back pocket and nobody can ever take it away from you. It's always something you can fall back on. But I also think that always learning is something good as well. Trying to learn new things, always trying to better yourself, trying to improve your skills. I mean, I'm not an artist, so I can't speak to that. But if I take it from my perspective, I always read. If there's something that interests me, then I will go and find out the information. If it's going to help me do my job better, then I want that information. So I will go and read up on it and try to improve my knowledge on that particular thing. So from my perspective, yes, you must have a qualification. Nobody can take it away from you, but always just continue to try to improve yourself and add to it.
Well, as someone who, I don't have any qualifications, I basically worked and taught myself everything. Well, I don't think I could say that I taught myself. It's because of the efforts and time and energy of a bunch of people that I met along the way that I'm able to do what I do. So let's not discount that. I think it helps to have a qualification, definitely. Cumulative knowledge is the way that the world runs. So definitely build on the things that, you know, you innately understand about music making. But I also think that people shouldn't discount the different ways that people are capable of learning. I mean, you know, we're in South Africa, there's a lot of people who don't have the opportunity to go to school and yet are still able to teach themselves everything that they need to know. So I wouldn't say that having a qualification is the be all and end all. I think that things like church, you can learn how to play the piano in church and absolutely master something like that. I think that talent is not something that can be taught at schools. I think that you can, you know, it helps if other people are going to place value on the piece of paper that says that you spent this much time at this institution and this is what you learned, that's fine. If it gives you confidence to have that piece of paper in your back pocket, also fine. But I think that if you grew up in the church and you played the piano and sang in the choir and you had a neighbor who happens to be great at business management and has a bunch of businesses that are flourishing, whether that's making bread, you know, for your local town or whatever, there are ways that you can learn very practically everything that you know is worth knowing when you're running a business, when you're, you know, starting out interacting with other people in this sort of network of, you know, people who need to make the industry run. So it's great to be able to have somebody more experienced impart their knowledge upon you in whatever way that comes, whether that's in a school or not. It's also great to be able to discover things for yourself and your style. I mean, some of the best artists that are out there taught themselves how to do everything that they know how to do, and they're absolutely amazing at it. So I think that, you know, with time, I'm trying not to say something. Let me just say it, actually. And you can decide whether you want to keep it in this recording. I'm not anti-establishment all the time, but I think that a lot of the ways that we come to learn about the world are rooted in Western beliefs and belief systems. And I think that things definitely need to be looked at when it comes to decolonization of institutions. And so when you go to a place to learn something, it's important that you understand that this person or this institution who is trying to bestow this knowledge upon you is not going to necessarily be right about everything that they're putting into your head. Having said that, if you can find the right institution and something that fits with your belief system and makes sense to your life, go ahead and get that qualification. Definitely good for your confidence and good for your knowledge base.
I like what you said, Shiba, about the decolonization of institutions, because I think even without the concept of decolonization, although colonization is how this has come about, but it is important to recognize that sure, there are systems in place, but these systems don't complement necessarily what you had in mind or what you are feeling to the core of what you should be doing in this life. And if you can be subjective, as Marcia has suggested, and look at, be able to identify within your institutional learning the things that you want and the things you don't want for your career, then institutionalization is suitable for you. But if you are just full on, like, I'm just gonna rebel this business, then it's not for you. Institutionalization is not for you. And I've seen countless examples of people that didn't need to be institutionalized to come about and do their art in such an incredible way. So as a previous academic, I'm incredibly astounded and constantly astounded by people that didn't need to go to institutions. But at the same time, I do say that there is a way of thinking that institutionalization presents to certain people that you would not often find, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think that at least an institutionalization or an institution can present to you things that you should know and stimulate even more what you don't know, and stimulate the curiosity enough to get to that point. At least that's my personal account. Yeah, so but it's beautiful to hear everyone's different opinions on this, and I'm sure everyone's going to appreciate it, because I feel like it's a dilemma that lots of people fight. You know, do I go to an art school? Do I go to Berkeley? Or do I just read up online about it, or listen online, or watch online about it? Yeah, and I guess in a way, we're kind of doing exactly that with this show. So thanks for contributing to the School of That's a Fact.
Also, don't get me wrong. I mean, the knowledge is the important part, not necessarily how you get it. I mean, you can't go and practice law without a law degree. That's just, you can't do it. So yes, in some cases.
Exactly.
I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you the story on another day of my husband, who is an engineer, but now he's a film producer, but he's got an engineering qualification. So it doesn't, to me, I mean, I must agree with you 100%. I didn't study entertainment law specifically, but I went and taught myself, basically. So I must agree with 100% with what you're saying.
So obviously we're going through a pandemic, and as experts in the field and observers at the same time of the music and arts field, I would love to know, and I'm sure that everyone else would love to know, what you would suggest artists do to keep themselves busy during a time where arts and music is on standby.
So like I said, I'm not an artist, but I would just logically, I would think, look at what you can do on your own. If I think of a director or a writer, you need to write scripts in the time where things are not busy. Maybe try and get started on those things that have been sitting in your mind all of the time. Look at what you can accomplish on your own during the times where we are locked down, where work is scarce, where things are not happening as fast as we'd like them to be. Maybe try to prepare for when things pick up, that you've got things ready. That script that's been at the back of your mind for the last 2 years, that's in a more presentable state. But again, I'm not an artist. I'm just trying to think. Look at things that you can do on your own. Look at things that you can prepare for when things open up again.
Yeah, I mean, keeping busy, honing your skills. I think that as let me say this: artistry isn't, based on my experience. I'm not a musician, but nothing could prepare you better for the future than practicing and honing your skills more. You've got the time. You might not be able to afford things as easily because you can't perform, and maybe your revenue stream has been cut off. But artistry comes from a very different place than just your ability to pick up a guitar and play it well. So if you are someone who plays the guitar and you are unable to play for an audience, maybe what you need to think about as an artist is why are you only an artist when people are watching you? And what can you do in an artful way to be able to sort of make up for that revenue stream, even if it means baking every day and selling them in your building? Or, the creative part is what will keep you fired up. And if you're busy and you're creative, no matter what that sort of outlet is, you'll only become a better artist. And I think that the more you diversify your identity in this time and sort of refine and reflect, and it's difficult to tell people to reflect when they're panicked and anxious, because the thing that they're so in love with doing and producing has just been sort of cut off. But again, just because no one is able to watch you doesn't mean that you stop being who you are. So work on the parts that tend to get neglected when you're so busy trying to prepare for performance. and work on those things that sort of nurture your internal fire when it comes to coming up with new ideas, you know, understanding that you are still a growing human being as an artist and you can still teach yourself new things. And in that comes more inspiration and more opportunities to make money and more opportunities to write songs and more ways to be able to grow as a human being and give yourself more experiences that will eventually pay off in the long run. I think that some artists are really, really focused on the attention that performing can bring. And you get artists, you get performers, you get session musicians, you know, people have different ways of using their skill. But in this point in time, we can't depend on performance all the time. So what do? We need to sort of work on the internal sort of machines and oil those so that by the time there are people watching again, you know, you can bring an even bigger, brighter, better part of yourself. And that is a journey that is worth having. It's not a destination, it's a journey. So go on that journey, take those walks. It's worth it.
As an artist, I can testify to that because I've been watching this series called Chef's Table on Netflix.
Yes.
And I've, as you know, just to be able to take myself away from my my own artistic songwriting, music environment, I've been able to look at that and analyze, oh my gosh, how well this has been curated, first of all, how quality the production is and the film equipment. And then of course, the main subject matter, which is the chef itself, and how they go through this journey and their own story of leading up to their most profound chefing career and moment and peak in their lives. So it's the beauty is being able to find the inspiration, not even being in, you know, find the inspiration to just automatically be inspired, you know, by these what we would consider menial things in our lives, especially for us artists who I would assume a lot of us to be quite work orientated, and then to kind of just settle down to the basics. Because I find a lot of inspiration from cooking. When I watch my mom cook, I'm just like, oh, wow, the ingredients to my song. I can taste the ingredients to my song. So literally just sitting back and finding those menial, finding pleasure in the menial and inspiration in the menial. Yeah, that's very important. Gosh, that's a bar, that's a song. We like to call this the follower asks session. This question comes from Denise Onen. That thing of being an introvert but having to be extra and reach out online because business. I see Shiba laughing. Marketing with imposter syndrome and social media exhaustion.
You know, this one was something that I dealt with a little bit last year as well. I used to enjoy social media. It was so fun to be able to engage with people and tell people what I was up to, have conversations and debate and all of those things. And, you know, I consider myself, you know, I started out as a very adventurous kid, very outgoing. And as, you know, time has gone by, I've become more and more introverted, and I want to share less and less on social media because I enjoy my private life. I enjoy my time with my partner, hanging out with my sister. You know, those are moments that are for me, and I don't feel like I need to share them with the world. And so, you know, one of my artists had come up and said, why don't you post more frequently? There's not a lot of pictures of you. I don't see any selfies, you know, as someone who is a media strategist, you're supposed to show people, you're supposed to have lots of followers, you're supposed to have this sort of proof of concept. And I understand this completely, but if that's not natural to you, it's not something that I would encourage you to do. Because authenticity, this is everyone's favorite word right now, but it's never been truer. If you're going to be an authentic person online, you need to make sure that whatever you're saying, whatever you're doing, whatever you're posting is is aligned with the person that you are. I'm not going to get into a bikini and then, you know, get onto a deck in a hotel and say, you know, living my best life. It's not part of who I am. And my CV will speak for itself. People can ask for that if that's what they want. And I will go to whatever events, trade events, network with the people that I need to reach out to and do all of those things to get my job done. My job is not to be in the public eye and to, you know, gather all of these followers and be very, very famous. My job is to help you do that as an artist, right? So if you are somebody who is, you know, very sort of secretive, or you prefer to keep things very simple, there are ways to communicate who you are without even having to show your face. You know, there are avatars which have been around for a long time that you can use very creatively. If, you know, your most prized sort of function is to be a singer-songwriter, you know, Instagram doesn't work if you don't show faces, and there are ways around that. I mean, I used art, for example. I might not make my own art anymore, but you'll always see, you know, some depiction from some artist of a woman or a Black woman who looks almost like me, but not quite. And I admire their work, and I'm ready to showcase that. And I always have a catalog of people who are, you know, I'm ready to reach out to and say, I've been following your work. Maybe you could make some visuals for this artist, or whatever the case may be. So there is a continuation of the doing of your job that you can do without having to be this, you know, very, I suppose it's one of those things that people have come to sort of look into the world and understand as the standard of how to be accepted and liked and consumed by other people. Again, who are you? Who is your audience? And how are you engaging with them in a way that makes sense for you and makes sense for them? There are people for you everywhere. You just need to find them. You don't have to change who you are. So be quiet, be who you are, and find ways to communicate that in a way that makes you comfortable. Otherwise, you won't do it and you won't enjoy it. Your career will not go anywhere because you're not being your authentic self. I wouldn't fight that.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with posting. I'm an introvert. This is the most uncomfortable I've been in a long time, to be in front of.
I'm sorry.
So, you know, I'm very picky when I post. So I've got like a closed Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and you know, I'm cautious about what I put online. And I think what's important is, you know, if it's not who you are, then don't do it. You know, you need to post as honestly as possible, with integrity. It must be true to who you are. You know, there's lots of things you can do. You can limit your audience. You can, you know, the biggest thing for me is it must reflect who you are. So don't go and be something that you are not. Post honestly. It must be who you are. Don't post something, and then when somebody meets you in person, and then it's completely different to this person that they created in their minds based on your social media posts. Do your best to just post as honestly as possible. That reflects the true person that you are.
I see a lot of people trying to be something that they're not, and it's so evident. It really is so evident, and it is just something that you need to get away from. And the people or the artists that I look up to, especially people like Moonchild Sanelli and Billie Eilish. I see them posting incredibly authentically to themselves, and that's what makes them so big, and that's what makes them so respected, is simply because they're expressing themselves. And it's something that I wish for myself as an artist, which is why I made certain moves in my career to be able to do that, as well as I wish that upon everyone else. So yeah, thanks for that important word. For the last word, the last question is there, what do you think is the most important thing that artists need to remember from your perspective? It can be very simple. Let's start with Marcia.
I think you must be confident in yourself. You know, your attitude must be right, and it must be backed by the quality of your work. It's important to remember you must be able to back up with what you are and what you're saying with what you are giving. That's the most important thing. If you couple those two together, I think it's a killer combination. Your attitude and the quality of your work.
I think that there's this phrase that artists like using when they release music. We're going to drop this song on this date. We're going to drop this album. Don't drop things. Place them very carefully. Plan it out. Have a strategy. You know, be intentional. decide what is going to happen and when it's going to happen and with who it's going to happen. Put your blinders on and keep going. It doesn't help you to chop and change your plan every time something happens in the news or a new trend sort of erupts and you want to jump onto this and you want to jump onto that. It doesn't work. You need to eyes forward, plan, make sure that you understand yourself as much as you understand what you're trying to do and who you're trying to do it with. So if you know that on Monday mornings, you're most likely not feeling well because you're not a Monday morning person, and Tuesday is your best day for getting things done, don't schedule things for Monday morning. Rather say Monday's not for me and the rest of the week is going to be for the rest of the world, and then spend that Monday doing whatever self-care you need to do, practicing, doing things by yourself, and then hit the ground running for the rest of the time. So have a plan about how you fit best into your sort of processes of how to be creative, and then how to do the admin, and then how to do the following up. Understand what your makeup is or what your triggers are, and get a hold of those and keep your mind right. I think that's the basis of everything I've just said. This is the thing that you need to protect at all costs, because if you cannot control this, you have nothing.
That's deep, but it's true. And what I'm getting from both of you is backup and plan and confidence. To conclude, as per tradition, we like to state affirmations about ourselves, either about ourselves or to our followers. My authenticity is king, and that's a fact.
I am as happy as I decide to be in every moment, and every moment that I choose to be happy in is happening right now. So that's a fact.
I am enough, and that's the fact.
Thank you so much to both of you, Marcia and Shiba, for sharing your expertise and your wonderful minds. This is the part that I'm obsessed with whenever I bring a guest on to That's a Fact, and that is just the incredible minds that spill over and the truths. So thank you for that. Yeah, I wish you safety. I wish you, during this pandemic, I wish you safety, just onward and upward in your careers. And I know that that's a fact too. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don't